as an expression of a simple truth. Israel is coming back to Africa, and Africa is coming back to Israel. I believe in Africa. I believe in Africa. I believe in its potential, present and future. It is a continent on the rise. Its people are diverse and talented. I've made strengthening our relations one of our top priorities, national and international priorities of the State of Israel. It's the reason I became the first Israeli Prime Minister to visit Africa in decades. Well, one thing I can assure you, it won't be decades until an Israeli leader visits Africa again. It won't be 5 years, it'll be a few months. Africa and Israel share a natural affinity. We have, in many ways, similar histories. Your nations toiled under foreign rule. You experienced horrific wars and slaughters, and you are still fighting to get out of the past into the future valiantly, in efforts that I deeply admire. With determination and conviction, you won your independence. You healed the wounds of the past to chart a future of hope for your people. This is very much our history. Our people, too, were denied independence for far too long. Our people, too, suffered the indignity of bondage, slavery, and dispossession. Our people, too, experienced unimaginable horrors of mass death and genocide. But we never, ever gave in. We fought for our independence and won. We think that Israel now is the best partner that the countries of Africa could have, and it's something that is dear to our hearts. The founder of modern Zionism, the national movement of the Jewish people, was Theodor Herzl, and he said, after I liberate the Jewish people, I will go to Africa to help liberate the black people. We have our African brethren, the Ethiopian Jews, who are in our society, and I personally work every few weeks to help integrate more and more and incorporate them in our society. I believe this. I believe in Africa. I believe in your future, and I believe in our partnership.
I believe that Israel still continues with this path of supporting its friends, its allies, its family. And just like we did that in 1967, Israel supports and does what it can. I did hear that Mr. Kanu was in Israel, in Jerusalem, before he was abducted and disappeared from the public's eye. And this is the most important thing that I want Biafrans to take from this discussion, that Israel, we stand with you guys. And although the cause of Biafra is not very familiar with the world and with Israelis, I want to say that, because of my activity, because of what I do, more and more Israelis are hearing about the cause of Biafra each and every day. So yes, we do stand with you. I want you to know.
I bring greetings from Indian soil. The Bible says that the Lord is my strength, and the victory comes from the Lord. Hallelujah.
Amen.
The wickedness of the injustice against the Biafran people and the critical analysis of the role of the Nigerian government and the international community. The Nigerian government and the wider world have a long history of treating the Biafran people, who are preliminary from the southeast of Nigeria, unfairly and wickedly. The objective of the report is to be critical analysis of the numerous types of injustice and evil that have happened with the Biafran people, have endured, as well as the contributions of the Nigerian government and the international community to ensure the continuations of this injustice. The Biafran people have a long history of a political and economical dominance in the Nigerian before the 1960 independence. They also have a rich culture past. However, since Nigerian independence from Biafran from Britain in 1960, the Biafran people have experienced the huge marginalization and discrimination. This marginalization led the declaration of the Republic of Biafra in 1967, which sparked the brutal civil war that lasted until 1970. The war resulted in the death of over 5 million Biafrans, primarily due to the starvation and disease. The political marginalization since the end of the civil war, the Biafran people have been systematically excluded from the key political position in Nigeria. This has led to the lack of representation and the feeling of disenfranchisement among the Biafran population. The economic injustice. The southern east region of Nigeria, where the Biafran people predominantly reside, is rich in natural resources, particularly oil. However, the Nigerian government has constantly exploited these resources without adequately investing in the development of this region. This has led in the widespread poverty, underdevelopment, and environmental degradation in the Biafran community. The Nigerian government has been accused for numerous human rights abuse against the Biafran people, include extrajudicial killing, torture, and forced disappearance. This abuse perpetrated by the Nigerian security forces and have which seeks the self-determination and independence for the Biafran people in 2021. The leader of indigenous people of Biafra, Nnamdi Kanu, which abducted from Kenya and was extraordinarily redemption from the Kenya to Nigeria against the international law. United Nations Working Group has ordered that Nigerian government to release Nnamdi Kanu unconditionally and compensate him appropriately for infringing on his rights. Yet, Nigerian government refuses to comply with these orders. Nigerian Appeal Court has discharged and acquitted Nnamdi Kanu for every count charges that Nigerian governments level against him. Yet, Nigerian government refused to release the leader of IPOB Nnamdi Kanu. The international community has largely turned a blind eye to the plight of the Biafran people during the Biafran War. Many countries, including the United States and the United Kingdom, etc., supported the Nigerian government to subjugate the Biafran people for providing them the military and the financial aid. This support enabled the Nigerian government to continue its brutal campaign against the Biafran people, resulting in the death of over 5 million people of Biafrans. In the recent year, the international community has continued to explore their economy and political interest in Nigeria as against the human rights and well-being of the Biafran people, despite humorous reports of human rights abuses by the Nigerian government. The international community has failed to take meaningful action to address these issues of wickedness. The Biafran people have faced a long history of injustice and wickedness at the hand of Nigerian government and the international community. It is very critical for the international community to recognize and address this injustice and to support the Biafran people in their quest of self-determination and independence as contained in the United Nations Charter. The independence of Biafra is long overdue. The more the international community is delaying the declaring Biafra as an independent nation, the more Africa will continue to be in the dark. As Biafra is the light bearer of the African continent, all honest nations and NGOs who are the lovers of freedom, justice, should support this restoration of Biafra. As in the end, I want to say, as injustice to one is injustice to all.
Now, after dropping the last video that I made on the other channel, now so many people came on my platform and they said, when did international community start talking about Nnamdi Kanu? Now, the first video that I posted is from the Israel. That is the Prime Minister of Israel. When he spoke about, Biafra, the genocidal attack, and the ordeals that the Biafrans are going through in the hands of the Zoo government. That is one out of many. I had to repost the Indian journalist who spoke about Nnamdi Kanu, or should we enter into the Finnish government? the people of the Finland, the Finnish people rather, on how numerously their journalists have also made awareness concerning Biafra because of the influence of Mazi Simon Ekpa and Joko. We'll be talking about Mazi Simon Ekpa later on today. So if you're opportune to watch this video, to the end, you'll be hearing a lot of interesting stories about Mazi Simon Ekpa's ordeal currently and how the court trial is going to continue on the 11th, what to expect and what not to expect. But that is by the way. International communities, international countries of the world, powerful countries are beginning to know what Biafra stands for. They are beginning to talk about it. They might not come out necessarily and show their alliance. Some we've seen, cases of, I don't want to talk about UK is one of the major problems that we're having, but I don't want to talk about them. The United States have shown, even in their Congress, directly and indirectly, their support, full-time support. They've also shown that they know what is ongoing in the Zoological Republic of Animal Kingdom. These things are good, for Biafrans. And this is one thing I still respect Nnamdi Kanu for. He was able to bring out the world, to put interest in the Biafran struggle because of his high level of intelligence. Nnamdi Kanu is like, how will I put him? Is another species on his own, and not just your regular kind of species, a powerful one at that, who has made sure that his influence, have made the world to come to a realization that these people are serious about their cause. You must understand that. And when you start understanding that, then you start knowing that Biafrans are not ready to back down in their quest to get freedom. They are not. Not now, not tomorrow. It's a process. And you must understand the process. If you're not understanding the process, then you don't have that Biafran spirit in you. Nobody gets freedom overnight. You must fight for freedom. You must fight for freedom. You must understand that. So talking about freedom and talking about how Mazi Nnamdi Kanu has been able, and Simon Ekpa has been able to open up, the borders for international communities to align, with the Biafran dreams. Let me tell you one thing you don't know. Mazi Simon Ekpa needs his flowers. You must give him his flowers because he merits it. Look at what is happening today. Look at how he has been able. In fact, I don't want to talk about Mazi Simon Ekpa too much because he's another species on his own that people have failed to, align with most people because they feel that his pattern, of fighting for freedom. Everybody have their pattern. Yours might be, on the low-key side, but you must understand that you don't just get freedom by mere words. Actions are embedded in your words for you to get that freedom. You understand, right? So you must understand that. Freedom demands a lot. And for somebody who has put himself in the forefront, he doesn't care about what you say. So when you come out to, jeopardize, to insult his effort, it's actually so irritating looking at that. And knowing how Biafrans who claim that they are together in the struggle are talking down on this man. But meanwhile, let us give you a full analysis of Simon Ekpa and Joko's ordeal in court today. Meanwhile, do not forget to share this video to as many groups and platforms as possible. God bless you. Enjoy this one.
Today being the 7th of June of 2025, the trial of Mr. Simon has continued, and in this video we shall be covering the court proceedings and every other details within. First thing first, the pictures and videos used in this particular video coverage are for illustrative purposes. This does not represent the videos from the court session today in any way, shape or form. With all of that being said, let's kickstart this video. Well, the court session kicked off at around 10:30 a.m., which is quite early.
The two different legal counsel teams were present. That is to say, the legal counsel team of Simon and the prosecuting legal counsel team were present. So the court session started by Simon's lawyer making an introductory speech. He started by saying, yesterday, the court heard accusations that my client used social media to cause trouble and violence in the southeastern region of Nigeria. We believe this is wrong. The evidence shown was weak and didn't clearly prove my client caused any violence. The court needs to see the full picture of what happened online and not just parts that the other side wants to show. My client's posts were misunderstood. We are sure that a fair look at all facts will show my client is innocent. This statement from Simon's lawyer did not sit well with the prosecuting lawyer, and that is why he stood up by saying, "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the defense is attempting to distract you from the very real consequences of the defendant's actions. While they may argue about the context of the post, the fact remains violence occurred. People were harmed. The defendant's words, broadcast to a wide audience, fueled that violence. We will present evidence linking those words to specific acts of unrest, demonstrating the tangible harm caused by the defendant's online activity. The defense's attempt to minimize the impact of these words is an insult to the victims and disservice to justice. We ask you to consider the very real harm caused by the defendant's actions." And this, like I said, is a statement coming from the prosecuting lawyer addressed to the judge. This whole statement coming from the prosecuting lawyer did not sit well with Simon's lawyer, and that is why he stood up and said, "The prosecution is trying to make my client look guilty by saying his social media post caused the violence, but that's not the whole story. They are only showing you some posts, not all of them, and they are taking things out of context. My client was talking about important issues, but that's not the same as telling people to be violent. The prosecution is trying to make it seem like my client's words directly caused the violence, but they haven't shown any real proof of that. They are guessing, not showing facts. We are going to show you that the violence had many causes, not just my client's post. We'll also show that other people were saying similar things, but only my client is being blamed. That is not fair." On that note, I'm going to call on my second witness to take the stand and testify that my client's post was not inciting in any way, shape, or form. At this point, Simon's lawyer called upon his second witness. Yes, this person is a second witness because he previously in the court session, he called a very first witness that was codenamed Peace. But today he presented a second witness, and this witness is codenamed KC. At this point, Simon's lawyer called upon KC to take the stance because he wants to cross-examine Casey. He wants to ask him some questions that will help prove that Simon is not guilty but innocent. Yes. So let's take a look at the cross-examination between Simon's lawyer and Casey, a witness who happens to be a close friend of Simon. So Casey took to the stand and Simon's lawyer continued or asked him a couple of questions. He was like, "Good morning, Casey. Thank you for being here today. You've known Simon for quite some time, haven't you?" Casey replied by saying, "Good morning. Yes, I've known Simon for over 5 years. We've worked together on several community projects." The defense lawyer, which is Simon, continued by saying, "That's great to hear. Can you describe Simon's character? What kind of person is he?" Casey replied by saying, "Absolutely. Simon is one of the most compassionate and dedicated individuals I know. He's always advocating for social justice and equality. He genuinely cares about people and believes in peaceful solutions in problems." Simon's lawyer asked, "Have you ever seen this man, my client, engage in any violent behavior or express violent thoughts?" Casey replied by saying, "Never. Simon is all about peaceful activism. He believes in dialogue and understanding, not violence. I've seen him handle tense situations with calmness and reason." The defense lawyer, which is Simon's lawyer, continued by saying, "Now, let's talk about Simon's social media post, which the prosecuting lawyer believes or claims incites violence. Have you reviewed this post?" Casey replied or answered by saying, "Yes, I have. I looked at them closely and I can tell you that they do not incite violence at all." Simon's lawyer continued by saying, "What do you believe Simon was trying to convey through this post?" Casey replied by saying, "Simon was expressing his frustration with social injustice and calling for change." His posts were about raising awareness and encouraging people to come together peacefully. He was advocating for constructive dialogue, not violence. Simon's lawyer responded by saying, the prosecution has highlighted specific phrases from Simon's post as evidence of incitement. Can you address those concerns? Casey replied by saying, certainly. The prosecution is taking those phrases out of context. For example, when Simon used strong language, it was to emphasize the urgency of the issues at hand, not to incite violence. If you read the entire post, it's clear he was advocating for peaceful protest and community engagement. The lawyer continued by saying, can you give me an example of specific post that prosecution has misinterpreted? Casey said, yes. There's one post where Simon talks about the need for people to stand up against injustice. The prosecution claims he was inciting violence, but in reality, he was encouraging people to participate in peaceful demonstrations. He explicitly stated that violence is not the answer. Simon's lawyer replied by saying, the prosecution has also suggested that Simon's social media activity paints him as a terrorist. How do you respond to that? Casey said, that's completely unfounded. Simon is not a terrorist. He's a community activist. He has dedicated his life to helping others and promoting positive change. Labeling him a terrorist is not only inaccurate, but also deeply disrespectful to his character and his work. Simon's lawyer responded by saying, can you provide specific examples of Simon's community involvement that demonstrate his commitment to peace? Casey said, absolutely. Simon has organized numerous peaceful protests led by community cleanup initiatives and volunteered at local shelters. He's also been involved in efforts to uplift the community through non-violent means. For instance, last year, he organized a peaceful march to raise awareness about local environmental issues, and it has a huge success here in Finland. The defense lawyer said, in your opinion, is Simon a threat to public safety? Casey replied by saying, not at all. Simon is a force for good in our community. He promotes understanding and cooperation among people. He's everything terrorist is not. Simon's lawyer continued by asking, the prosecution might argue that Simon's passionate language could be interpreted as inflammatory. How would you counter that? Casey responded by saying, passionate language is not the same as incitement. Simon's passion comes from a place of deep concern for social justice. He uses his voice to advocate for positive change, and he channels his passion into organizing peaceful actions. His intent is always to inspire, not to incite. The defense lawyer said, thank you, Casey. Your insights are invaluable. One last question. Do you believe that Simon's actions and words align with principles of peaceful activism? Casey answered, absolutely. Simon embodies the principle of peaceful activism. He believes in power of dialogue and community engagement. His actions consistently demonstrate the commitment to non-violence and social justice. The lawyer continued by saying, thank you, Casey. Your testimony has been incredibly helpful in clarifying Simon's character and intentions. That concludes my questionings. At this point, the prosecuting lawyer wasn't too happy with the responses coming from Simon's lawyer and this testifier known as Casey. The prosecuting lawyer stood up and said, Your Honor, I would like to bring to the court's attention a matter of significant concern regarding the witness Casey and the defendant's lawyer. It has come to my attention that there is a strong possibility that Casey and the defense counsel have engaged in rehearsing their questions and answers prior to this testimony. This practice raises serious ethical questions about the integrity of the witness testimony. While it's common for lawyers to prepare their witnesses, there's a fine line between proper preparation and coaching. The latter can lead to distortion of the truth and undermine the very foundation of our judicial system. My Lord, permit me to cross-examine Casey. And the judge gives his permission. Yes. So now at this point in time, the prosecuting lawyer wants to cross-examine Casey because he believes that Casey and Simon's lawyer rehearsed their questions and answer. So the prosecuting lawyer wants to talk to Casey directly and see if he can somehow, some way remove or deduce data that definitely will be used against Simon. So the prosecuting lawyer asks Casey, Good morning, Casey. Thanks for being here today. I would like to ask you some questions to clarify your testimony regarding Simon. Casey replied by saying, "Good morning, I'm here to help." The prosecuting lawyer said, "You mentioned that you've known Simon for over 5 years. Can you tell us how often you interact with him?" Casey said, "We interact regularly, especially during community projects and events. We often collaborate on initiatives aimed at improving our neighborhood." The prosecuting lawyer said, "Well, would you say you have a close relationship with Simon?" Casey said, "Yes, I consider him a good friend. We share similar values, goals when it comes to community service." The prosecuting lawyer replied, "Given your close relationship, is it possible that your views on Simon are biased?" Casey replied, "I understand how that might be perceived, but I believe my views are based on his actions and character, not just our friendship. I've seen him in various situations, and he consistently demonstrates integrity and compassion." The prosecuting lawyer said, "You stated that Simon's social media posts were about raising awareness and advocating for peaceful change. Can you explain how you interpret the language he used in those posts?" Casey replied by saying, "Certainly, Simon uses strong language to express urgency about social issues, but his intent is always peaceful. He aims to inspire action, not violence. For example, when he talks about standing up against injustice, he's calling for unity and peaceful protest." The prosecuting lawyer said, "However, some of those posts contain phrases that could be interpreted as inflammatory. For instance, when Simon said, 'We must rise up against injustice,' how do you reconcile that with the idea of peaceful protest?" Casey said, "I see your point, but context is crucial. Simon's call to rise up is not about violence. It's about mobilizing people to engage in peaceful demonstrations. He often emphasizes the importance of non-violent methods in his post." The prosecuting lawyer said, "Context is important indeed, but do you think that the average person reading this post might interpret them differently, perhaps as incitement?" Casey said, "It's possible, but I believe that if they read the full context and if they watch his full videos, they will understand his true intent. Simon often follows up with messages about the importance of peaceful dialogue and constructive action." The prosecuting lawyer replied by saying, "You mentioned that Simon has organized peaceful protests. Can you provide specific examples of these events and their outcomes?" Casey said, "Yes, he organized a march last year focused on environmental issues, which was peaceful and well received by the community. We had local leaders speak about the importance of sustainability, and the event fostered a sense of community and collaboration." The prosecuting lawyer replied by saying, "Were there any incidents of violence or unrest at this event?" Casey said, "No, there were no incidents. Simon emphasizes non-violence in all his activities. He believes that change can be achieved through understanding and cooperation and not through conflict." The prosecuting lawyer continued or responded with, "You also stated that Simon is not a terrorist. Can you explain what you believe constitutes a terrorist act?" Casey said, "A terrorist act involves using violence and intimidation to achieve political aims. Simon does not engage in any such behavior. His actions are rooted in peaceful activism and community building." The prosecuting lawyer said, "So, if Simon's posts were interpreted as inciting violence, would you still stand by your assertion that he's not a terrorist?" Casey said, "Yes, because his intent was never to incite violence. He advocates for peaceful solutions and encourages others to do the same. His posts about raising awareness and fostering dialogue, not by promoting violence." The prosecuting lawyer said, "Thank you, Casey. One last question. Do you think your close relationship with Simon might affect your objectivity in assessing his actions and words?" Casey said, "I believe I can be objective. I focus on his actions and the positive impact he has on the community. I have seen firsthand how he inspires others to engage in constructive dialogue and peaceful activism." The prosecuting lawyer said, "Thank you for your responses, Casey. That concludes my questioning." Casey answered, "Thank you for your opportunity to clarify my views." Wow. Casey, as a witness, has answered or replied to all of the questions coming from the prosecuting lawyer excellently without mixing or mincing words. Casey happens to be a well-informed individual. He knew what he was supposed to say and things he shouldn't say. Well, during the course of the conversation, Simon's lawyer replied, "My lord, as you can see, my witness KC has answered all the questions from the prosecuting lawyer with complete honesty and transparency. He also provided clear and consistent responses, demonstrating a genuine understanding of the situation and Simon's character. His testimony has been both informative and compelling, shedding light on the true nature of Simon's actions and intentions. The witness has not shied away from any question, and his answers have been forthright and unwavering. Therefore, my lord, I believe that Casey's testimony has been invaluable in providing a balanced perspective on the matters at hand. With that, and with the court's permission, I would like to call my next witness to the stand. My next witness is a member of a top human rights group in Europe. Permit me to call upon my next witness." And the judge replied by saying, "The stage is all yours. Feel free to call your next witness in." So at this point, Simon wanted